These secondary fifth-year students are having an English lesson incorporating a philosophical inquiry approach. They are also considering the stimulus individually, before beginning to work on it in small groups.
Okay, I'm going to come round and I'm going to give you a post-it note and I'm going to ask you to write on it maybe 1 or 2 words of the ideas that have come into your head having listened to that. First of all, I want you to do that on your own, okay? It really is just what you individually have been thinking, okay? Sean. I'm going to give you a piece of paper then between, say, 3 or 4 of you can just bunch up as you are, and I'm going to ask you to slam down those post-its to look at what you've all written, look at similarities, and then to start to talk to one another about why you thought what you thought, what's come to mind for you from that story. Okay? Let's start over here. Okay, just slam the post-its down in maybe a 3 or a 4. So let's have you sharing them with one another, the ideas that you've got down, and then we'll come to people to talk about what were their first ideas, okay?
I should go because I thought that it's like
when that story came out, I'd saw the news story either a day or 2 days before, and it was just the story about him, and he, you know, and it was a kind of a story of bravery and heroism and that kind of thing, that a man in, you know, that sort of extreme circumstances, having had 2 legs amputated below the knee, made it to the top of Everest, and that was the story. And it was only a couple of days later that this other part of the story came out, that that a dying man had been there at the time, and that he, the guy who was the amputee, and 140 other people had walked past him. And so I mean, I was interested in the story because it had changed. You know, it was changed in the way it was being presented in the media, that this man was being looked at and examined in a very different way than he had 2 days previously. That one day he was a hero, and 2 days later he's a villain, and you know that people's ideas about him had changed, and yet he'd still achieved the same thing. He'd still done the same thing. That was what interested me about the story. Can I just hear from these conversations that people had? There's quite a lot in common, but also quite a lot of difference of view, that people are coming at this story in different ways. Is there anybody who'd like to begin to just talk about what you have been saying to one another? Lisa.
we had probably like in common like guilt and on your conscience and stuff, but we also had that he'd been up twice before, and he'd maybe like have been really prepared the first time because he wouldn't have known what to expect, and because he'd been up twice before and he'd had experience, he didn't think he would need as much.
So had your focus been on the man who died?
Now we're looking for some connections and tensions. Philip, can you see any connections there?
Happiness and kindness.
Can you tell us why, Philip?
Well, if you're happy, you'll be kind to people.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Do you think that always happens?
Not all the time, but mostly.
You think most people are happy? Can you give us an example of that, Philip?
Well, if you were kind to people, you would be happy.
You just think that?
Because you're helping people.
Right. Right, so when you're happy, you generally tend to be more kind. Would everyone agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just stick your hands quickly in your head.
In the primary class, the pupils are now drawing connections and tensions between the themes that have been put forward.
Kindness. Well done.
This allows practice of this useful skill, and at the same time deepens understanding of the philosophical potential of the ideas on offer.
If you're jealous of something, then you might be dishonest.
Right, like in the story.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Can you give us any examples of that, Craig? Have you noticed that?
The greedy man was jealous that the poor man got all 3 axes, so he was dishonest to the goddess.
Right. Now that's in the story. Do you think that sometimes happens in life?
Yeah.
Would you like to give us an example of that, or could you?
Well, say your friend got a new game and you really wanted it, then you might be dishonest to other people saying, he stole my game.
Right, that would be really terrible, but you think they're connected. Okay, well done, love. Jealousy and dishonesty, excellent. Any more connections? I'm trying to get people who haven't spoken much or said much. Angus?
I agreed with Philip because, it's with Red Nose Day for comic relief. Because we're happy because we're being kind to people, we're giving money for people.
So you're going back to what Philip said and giving some supporting evidence. Well done, Angus. That's excellent because you've held that in mind. Okay, but at the moment, are there any more connections and tensions? Sophie?
Sadness and greediness can be a connection because when you're sad, sometimes you like to be greedy and steal something maybe.
Would anyone agree with Sophie? Hands up if you would agree. Sometimes when you're sad, it makes you greedy because you want to compensate. Well done, Sophie. Sadness and greed. Okay.
Well, I don't think that truth and greed would be a tension because greed, when you're greedy, you get very, like Grant said, it builds up on your conscience, and then you just eventually, and then it leads to sort of telling lies, and then eventually you feel that you have to tell the truth.
Is that right? Now that's quite an interesting point, Katie. So that you think it could start off as a tension, but if it goes on and builds up, it would eventually come round to truth again. Well
and
done.
we're kind of talking about what we think about.
Having also built their understanding of the ideas that have emerged from the stimulus, the secondary students are now ready to develop their philosophical questions.
We now need to move to, let's bring those ideas into questions that are going to make for good dialogue. Let's think, we could talk endlessly, couldn't we, about the rights and wrongs of these 2 people or these 152 people in this situation. But that story has raised for us a lot of interesting ideas. I've heard things from over here about teamwork, about preparedness to die, about having to make awful decisions, about sacrifice, about heroism, dedication, all of these ideas. Can you now, into your group, have a huddle and come up with a question that you think is going to take us into really good dialogue? Okay? Just thinking about your progress in this run, you've been like the king of the long-winded questions.
That was Grant's question.
Yeah, but in the past, do you know what I mean? You've kind of, you tried to get everything and had questions that got 3 different parts to it.
But that sums it up. Being a hero.
Because you can say, is a hero achieving their goals by reaching the top of the mountain, or is a hero saving somebody's life, or is a hero protecting yourself?
Yeah, that's a quality question, partly because it's so open, and when we've done this before, you've been like, is it right to do X, Y and Z? should he have done X, Y, or Z, that is a much better question, and it should make a much better dialogue.
Too, because people can talk more about this, because you don't just have to talk about this piece of text.
Absolutely.
But he obviously wanted more success. So what makes us successful? Like a problem.
Are you done with your question?
Really good bit.
How was it not very good?
That's just, I don't know.
It's not particularly well worded. Emma, should we work on that? Because I think there is a good question. I'm not accusing you. If you say Emma in this group, we're addressing at least 2/3 of the people. Okay. Is it such a great achievement, even though you had the choice to save a life? Can you widen it up, because we don't just want to talk about this one instance.
See, there's a lot of things you could talk about why was he the one picked on and all them other people passed him. Because he was amputee, he had limelight, so then
they're all just
they made it automatically picked on him. But he never done anything
any different than the 140 nameless.
He obviously told the story first of that, and then he said it, but nobody else said it in the book. Oh, we passed a guy who died on the way.
I mean, it's interesting what makes people newsworthy and how these stories are presented, because the media really does love heroes, but they also love villains. Okay. All right, so we've got 6 questions and a moose. Indeed. Okay, so I'm going to read through the questions for you, and first of all we're going to see if we can make some connections between the ideas in the questions, and then I'm going to ask you to vote on the question, but in a little bit different way than we have done in the past. Okay, so question 1, which was from Emma, Lisa and Lauren, is what makes us successful? Okay. Question 2 from Camilla, Andrea and Maria is choosing to survive a selfish decision? Is choosing to survive a selfish decision? Question 3 from Melissa, Elise and Emily. Can you call it selfish in extreme conditions to think about yourself first? All right, you just want to spend a minute thinking about which of these questions you like, which of those do you think is going to make a worthwhile question for dialogue? Okay, can I ask if someone might like to tell us which of these they think is a good question and why? You can praise your own question if you want. Grant.
Number 4, I like number 4 because it's my question.
Are there any other reasons why you like your question?
Because you can relate it to things other than this scenario, because really some of them are just based on one scenario. Whereas you're better to have a question that you can relate to everything.
And we're saying that the more open the question, the better the dialogue.
The more things you can say about it.
Yeah, thanks Grant. Emma?
I like number 2 because it seems like there's quite a lot to discuss in it.
Which is choosing to survive a selfish decision. As many as you want. What I'm going to do today is ask you to vote for as many questions as you want. Okay, this is called omni-voting, because, and we'll see how differently that works out for us. Like we said, we've seen some connections with some of the questions here. There are related ideas, and if we're voting for all of the questions which you like, then hopefully we'll have more consensus about how we're going to go forward. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, so question 1. What makes us successful? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Question 2. Is choosing to survive a selfish decision? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Question 2. Is choosing to survive a selfish decision. 5A, selfish. Okay.
Way. It could be that, like, it's getting it off your conscience. It's like, say, you know.
Does everyone agree with that? Is there anyone who disagrees with that? Grant, what do you think? Is that always the same? Is that always true?
No.
Well, tell us about it.
Well, really, sometimes if you are honest, like you don't get the reward. Sometimes you would say you were honest, as in doing something bad, you wouldn't get a reward, but you would get rid of that. You would get rid of that bad feeling, and it would make you really proud of yourself to own up.
You mean if you were honest?
Yeah.
You'd get rid of this bad feeling. We spoke about this briefly earlier. Can anyone else say anything about this bad feeling if you're not honest?
Both the classes we've been following have only recently started P4C and have only had 3 months of learning to develop their skills in philosophical dialogue.
Where do you feel guilty?
Even in this time, however, we see evidence of deeper thinking beginning to emerge.
In your
Heart.
Would anyone like to tell us then more about this? What is your soul? How can you feel guilty in your soul, or how can you feel guilty in your spirit? These are big questions. Lots of adults find these difficult. Gary?
Your soul is kind of the thing that makes you, you.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of, like, and it's been inside you since you were born.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Okay. Anyone else about this? Kirk, what do you think?
Well, you'll know if you feel, you know that someone has guilt because, like, it changes their attitude and because, like, they used to be, like, nice and kind, and since they feel guilty, they get a little bit angry with people, and
All right.
and once they've been angry with you, they start to feel sad of their guilt.
Okay. Can I give you another question then? If you can feel guilty in your soul for being dishonest, does dishonesty affect your soul? Does it change your soul or change that inside bit of you? Craig?
Well, it does because, well, say you used to never tell a lie and you did it once, then you might do it again and again and again.
So you think that your soul starts to change according to how you behave?
Yeah.
when you tell a lie, it usually can, it depends what it is, but sometimes it can be quite big and it can eat away at you. And
It can eat away at you.
And then eventually it just changes you, because you can't change what you can change what you want to be, but you can't change what you are.
Wow.
But if you lie, it sort of covers up who you are.
Anyone like to add to that? Katie, you choose someone.
Grant.
Well, that's kind of is what happens, because say something, maybe if you lied about something that happened, well, lied about something that you are, which you really aren't, like say I says